The streets of Valera were silent, save for the soft murmur of the wind, as Sasha stood at the gates of the mansion, her hands trembling as she stared at the baby boy swaddled in a blanket, abandoned by the roadside. She had made her choice, and now the weight of it pressed down on her chest, suffocating her with the realization that she had left him behind for a life she couldn't give him. The sound of her heart breaking echoed louder than the distant hum of the city, knowing this decision might haunt her forever. There was no going back now. The deed was done. But hey, before we dive in, don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe so you won't miss out on more intense stories like this. Stick with us to the end. I promise you won't want to miss what's coming. Sasha's feet felt heavy as she turned away from the mansion, her heart pounding in her chest. She had walked away from the one person who needed her the most, the child she carried for 9 months, the child she gave up with trembling hands and a silent prayer that he would be found by someone who could give him the life she couldn't. The streets of the city stretched out before her, vast and unknown, yet it felt as if the weight of her decision was heavier than anything she had ever carried. Back in Greendale, her small hometown, things had been much simpler. She had been a 14-year-old girl, growing up under the roof of her parents, Joseph and Teresa. They were strict but loving, their expectations for her clear: finish school, get a good job, and build a future for herself. There had been no room for distractions, especially not for boys. Sasha's father had always said, "You're too young for boys. Focus on your studies, on your future. Leave all that other nonsense alone." She had heard those words countless times, but nothing had prepared her for the overwhelming pull she felt when she met Kai. His eyes, dark and full of mystery, had captured her attention the moment they locked gazes. He made her feel seen in a way she had never experienced. It was the first time she felt wanted, loved even, and that feeling had been intoxicating. Every time she saw him, the world around her seemed to fade. Sasha would sneak out, make up excuses about studying at a friend's house or running errands. It had become a dangerous game, one that she thought she could win. But deep down, she knew it wasn't just a game anymore. She had crossed a line, and the consequences were coming. Now, standing at the gates of this mansion in a city she didn't know, Sasha felt the weight of everything crashing down on her. The guilt of abandoning her family, the fear of facing what was next, the sorrow of leaving her child behind. She felt it all. It hadn't started like this. It hadn't even seemed possible. 2 months earlier, Sasha had been sitting on her bed, flipping through a textbook she was supposed to be studying. Her mind, however, was elsewhere. She couldn't focus on the words in front of her because Kai was on her mind again. Their secret meetings had become a routine she couldn't seem to break. "You're too young for this, Sasha," her father's voice echoed in her mind. His words from that morning still stung. "Focus on being useful to yourself. Boys will only distract you." But she didn't want to listen. She wasn't just a child anymore. She was learning about herself in ways her parents didn't understand. And Kai made her feel alive. It had been a long time coming. The moment when Sasha would find herself standing at a crossroads she never imagined. It all started with one question. One moment of weakness. She had known something was wrong. Her stomach had been unsettled for weeks. But it wasn't until that day, when she felt her body shift and the nausea became unbearable, that the truth hit her. She was pregnant. She had waited too long to tell anyone, hoping it would go away. But there was no denying it. Her body was telling her everything she didn't want to face. And when she finally told Kai, she had hoped for support. She had hoped he would be there, that together they would face this new chapter of their lives. But his reaction had been cold, distant. "That can't be mine," he had said, his voice dripping with denial. "I've been careful." Sasha's heart had shattered in that moment. She had tried to reason with him, to explain that he was the only one she had been with, but his words had already begun to cut through her like a knife. "I'm not ready for this," he had said. "Don't tell anyone it's mine." With that, he had walked away, leaving Sasha standing alone, her hands clutching her stomach, trying to process what had just happened. It wasn't the way it was supposed to be. The days that followed were a blur of fear and confusion. Sasha had hidden her growing belly under loose clothes, pretending nothing was wrong. She didn't know how to face her parents. She didn't know how to tell them the truth. Every morning, she woke up dreading the moment they would notice. But deep down, she knew they would find out eventually. And one night, she overheard them talking. "She's been acting strange lately. I'm worried about Sasha," her mother had said softly. "Maybe she's finally taking her studies seriously." "It's about time," her father had replied. "She listens to us now and focuses on her future. She'll figure it out." Sasha had closed her eyes, her heart aching as she lay there in the dark. She could hear her parents' hopes and dreams for her, but all she felt was guilt. She had disappointed them, and she knew it. There was no going back now. She had to leave. The next morning, after her parents had gone to work, Sasha made up her mind. She packed a small bag with clothes, grabbed the money she had saved, and wrote a note. "I'm sorry. I love you. Please don't look for me." Her heart ached as she wrote the words, but there was no other choice. She couldn't stay and face the consequences. When she stepped outside, the weight of her decision hit her like a physical blow. She didn't know where she was going or what she would do when she got there, but she knew that she couldn't stay in Greendale any longer. With every step she took toward the bus station, the world around her seemed to grow bigger. It felt as though she was leaving behind everything she knew. And as the bus pulled away from Greendale, Sasha looked out the window one last time, her heart heavy with the knowledge that she had left her home and her family behind. The bus ride to Valora was long and silent. When she arrived, Sasha stepped off the bus, her legs weak from the journey. The city was overwhelming. Tall buildings, the noise of the crowd, and the rush of people moving in every direction made her feel small and insignificant. Sasha wandered the streets, unsure of where to go. She was alone, pregnant, and lost in a city that meant nothing to her. Her stomach growled with hunger, but she had no money to buy food. She passed by street vendors, the smell of grilled meats and fried dough wafting through the air, making her mouth water, but she had no way of paying for anything. "Excuse me," she asked a passerby, but they hurried past, not even sparing her a glance. Sasha felt her heart sink as she realized just how alone she was. The reality of her situation began to settle in. She had nowhere to go, no one to turn to. As night fell, Sasha continued walking, hoping to find somewhere safe to sleep. But the streets were becoming more intimidating by the minute. She kept her head down, her heart racing with fear, unsure of what to do next. Then, she spotted an elderly woman locking up what looked like a small shop. "Good evening, ma'am," Sasha said, her voice trembling. "Please, I'm new here and I'm lost. Can you help me? Please, I have nowhere to go." The elderly woman looked at her with surprise, then suspicion. "What do you mean you're lost? It's late. Where are your parents?" "I ran away from home," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. Sasha's throat tightened as she realized just how bad the situation had gotten. "I'm pregnant, and I was scared to tell my parents. I have nowhere else to go." The woman's face softened for a moment, but then it hardened again. "You're pregnant? At your age? What's wrong with you? Go away from here," she said, turning away and locking the door. Sasha felt her heart shatter as she watched the woman walk into the shop, leaving her standing in the cold, abandoned once more. Sasha stood there for a moment, staring at the closed door of the shop, her heart heavy with the realization that she was truly alone. She had hoped, even for a moment, that someone would show her compassion, but it hadn't happened. As the night grew darker and colder, Sasha found herself walking aimlessly, feeling the weight of her decision crashing over her like a wave she couldn't escape. With no money, no food, and no place to go, Sasha kept moving, her feet aching with each step. She passed through unfamiliar streets, the city's towering buildings and bright lights offering no comfort. The cold bite of the air seeped through her thin clothes, but the chill in her bones couldn't compare to the cold emptiness she felt inside. She had made her choice, but now it seemed as though it had left her with nothing but regret. Her mind wandered back to the day she had made that fateful decision. She remembered the look on Kai's face when she had told him she was pregnant. How could he have walked away so easily? His words still echoed in her mind, the sting of rejection sharp and unforgiving. She had loved him, truly believed he cared for her, but in that moment she had seen the truth. He didn't care, not really. The realization made her stomach twist with nausea. She had been a fool to believe he would be there for her, to think that a relationship built on lies and secrecy could withstand something like this. And now, she was facing the consequences alone. The streets were quieter now, the bustle of the city fading into a distant hum. Sasha walked past a park, her stomach growling with hunger, the gnawing emptiness inside her becoming unbearable. She couldn't remember the last time she had eaten. It felt like days ago. The reality of her situation was starting to sink in, and with it came the fear of what would happen next. Where was she going? What was she going to do? These questions seemed to echo in her mind, each one more desperate than the last. She was a 14-year-old girl in a strange city, pregnant, alone, and without any way to care for herself or the child she carried. As she passed a small alleyway, she stopped, her eyes drawn to a cardboard box tucked against the wall. It was an old box, battered and torn, but it might provide some shelter from the cold. She had no choice. With no money for a hotel and no family to turn to, she crawled inside the box, her body curling into a tight ball as she tried to get some sleep. But sleep wouldn't come. Her mind kept racing, filled with thoughts of her parents back in Greendale, wondering where she had gone, why she had left. The next few days passed in a blur. Sasha barely remembered them, only the pain of hunger and the constant fear that someone would notice her and send her back home. She spent her time wandering the streets, trying to find odd jobs to earn a few coins. Sometimes she found work cleaning for street vendors, other times she begged for food. Each day felt like a fight for survival, and each night she slept in a new spot, an alley, a park bench, the corner of a store. But it wasn't just survival that weighed on her. It was the guilt, the fear that her parents would never forgive her for what she had done. She knew her mother, Teresa, would cry for days. She would search for Sasha, desperate to find her daughter. And Joseph, her father, would never understand. He had always been so firm, so focused on Sasha's future, that the thought of her making such a drastic decision must have broken his heart. Sasha's only hope now was to keep moving. She couldn't go back. There was no going back to Greendale, no going back to the life she had known. The shame, the fear, the guilt, it was all too much. And as the days turned into weeks, she became more and more determined to survive. She couldn't afford to let herself fall apart. Not now. It was a week later when she met Martha, an elderly woman who ran a small clothing shop in one of Valora's quieter neighborhoods. Sasha had been passing by when Martha called out to her. "Hey girl, you look like you could use a meal," Martha said, her voice rough but kind. "You hungry?" Sasha had hesitated for a moment, the fear of being judged still strong, but her stomach growled so loudly that it answered for her. Martha smiled, beckoning her into the shop. "You're lucky I've got some leftovers from lunch. You'll be doing me a favor," Martha said as she handed Sasha a bowl of warm stew. Sasha sat down on a small wooden chair in the corner of the shop, the warmth of the food comforting her in a way she hadn't felt in days. She ate slowly, savoring each bite, trying to ignore the tears that threatened to spill from her eyes. She had never felt more alone, but this moment, this small act of kindness, made her feel like maybe, just maybe, things would be okay. Martha watched her quietly for a moment before speaking. "You know, you shouldn't be out here alone. It's dangerous. A girl like you, too young to be on her own in a city like this. What's your name, anyway?" "Sasha," she whispered, her voice hoarse from the days of silence. Sasha, huh? What's got you running around like this? Martha asked, her eyes narrowing with concern. Sasha's heart pounded in her chest. She wanted to tell her the truth, to confess everything, but the fear held her back. I don't have anywhere else to go, she said softly. Martha didn't press her further. Instead, she reached into her pocket and pulled out a few coins, pushing them toward Sasha. Take these. I know it's not much, but it's something. Sasha hesitated, her pride making her want to refuse, but she was too hungry, too desperate, and with a shaky hand, she took the money. Thank you, she said, her voice barely above a whisper. Don't mention it, girl. Just stay safe, all right? Martha replied, her voice soft but firm. Sasha nodded, standing up to leave, but before she could step outside, Martha stopped her. Hey, if you need a place to stay, you come to me. I've got a spare room in the back. It's not much, but it's better than the streets. Sasha froze, her mind racing. Was she really considering this? But the kindness in Martha's voice was undeniable, and for the first time in a long while, Sasha felt a glimmer of hope. Thank you, she whispered, tears welling in her eyes as she walked out into the night, clutching the money tightly in her hand. Sasha spent the next few days living in Martha's spare room. The small room was humble, but it was warm and safe, and for now, that was all Sasha needed. Martha had even found her work, washing clothes for the locals in exchange for a few coins. It wasn't much, but it kept her fed and kept her off the streets. But even as she worked and found small comforts in the quiet room, her thoughts never strayed far from her family. She could hear her mother's voice in her head, pleading for her to come home, and she could imagine her father's angry words, demanding to know why she had thrown away everything he had worked for. One day, as Sasha sat in the room folding clothes, she heard a knock on the door. It was Martha, holding a piece of paper in her hand. There's a job at the local market for a nanny. A family's looking for someone to help with their baby. They pay well, Sasha, Martha said, her eyes bright with hope. It could be a chance for you to earn more, get a little stability. Sasha thought about it for a moment. She didn't want to be stuck in the same cycle of fear and loneliness forever. Maybe this was the break she needed. I'll do it, she said, her voice steady for the first time in weeks. And just like that, Sasha's new life began to take shape. The road to redemption was long, and it was fraught with difficulties, but for the first time, Sasha could see a flicker of light at the end of the tunnel.